Welcome to Screams and Streams and part 2 of our discussion of Steven Spielberg's 1975 film Jaws. Let's get to the movie.
Now we're going to move on to a new category that we have, which focuses around the soundtrack or the sounds in the film, and we're going to go eerie to ear splitting. And I'm going to kick this one off, but I think pretty much everybody has the same opinion on this. Is the iconic dun dun sound is super eerie. Like you only need to hear the first two notes and you know something's coming, right? So I just love the soundtrack in this film.
And the number of people that I think haven't seen Jaws but still know that progression is dun dun. Like, yeah. It's referenced so many times by generations now, and I'm sure kids that make that reference haven't watched Jaws yet, but they know what it means.
Yeah.
And they don't overdo the music background either. Like, there's a lot of silent scenes in the movie itself, like building up to the classic dun 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 dun, like that. They use it so well. They knew what they had. It seemed like they knew that was an epic fear mongering song that they had.
Right.
And a great example of the silence is Hooper in the cage, and when he's underwater and it's silent, it's just the sound of being underwater. And so we know Jaws is in the water. We know something's going to come from that, but there's no dun dun. And then so when Jaws does hit the cage for the first time, it did startle me. I did get that jump scare because you know it's coming, but there's no musical cue. There's no sting to tell you. It just comes out.
Right.
And it really puts you into it. Like, because when Hooper's in the water, he's hearing nothing as well. So it's really well done there with the silence.
Yeah.
On the theme, there's a great bonus feature on the Blu-ray where there are just, crowd reactions to the film, and they're getting people to like redo the theme. And as iconic as it is and as simple as it is, all these people are like, da-na-na, is that it? Da-na-na? and what people are like, da-na, da-na. Like, so many people couldn't get it right, but they all loved the theme. Right. So it's iconic, it's simple, but people that just watched the film walked out of the theater like, it's there, but I don't know how it goes. Is there anything else on that?
That wraps it up for me, but I know you had an extra thing.
Yeah, I just had one moment in the film where, as great as the music is, and it's John Williams, who is a master of soundtracks and establishing mood. It's, I don't think there's a movie that he's done that isn't amazing for music and score. But during the hunt of the monster, when they're on the boat and they're pegging it with the barrels, and it's supposed to be this tense build up in this fight, right, for survival to kill the beast. And they shoot it with the second barrel. And then it just becomes this like jaunty Goonies-esque adventure music where it's just like this, like it would fit more with like Indiana Jones and like Short Round doing something crazy. It just completely ruined the mood. It's this tense fight with the monster, and they've got a second barrel on it.
Yeah.
And it's just like da 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 da. Like it's just almost like it could have been in Hook. It could have been in Pirates of the Caribbean. It just did not fit the tone.
Right.
And it just completely stops the tension of that moment.
I know this isn't tied to music, but I can't listen to that scene without saying this thought. Why didn't they tie all 4 barrels to the same arrow and hit Jaws with all 4 barrels right away, or 5 barrels, whatever they had? Why try to keep it close to the surface? I know I'm jumping around now, but you got grenades, you got all types of stuff. If you're just trying to kill the shark, blow it out of the water right away. That was just so dumb to me. You're not trying to catch it. Are you going to keep it as a pet?
Yeah, I know. We're not catching it and trying to keep it alive in the zoo or anything. You're trying to kill the shark. Yeah.
So I hate that I didn't ask that question.
Yeah. Well, it's because Hooper could only tie one knot at a time. He barely got that one barrel off before it almost took his hand off, right?
That's okay. Let's really get into this, because that's the other thing is, like, they spend all that time in the night scene when they're on the boat, and he's explaining all of his like high tech tracking stuff, and like, oh, I've got this, and it's sonar, and then they spend all that time tying a tracker to the barrel, and there's no reference to the tracking.
Yeah, afterwards.
They completely rely on visual after that.
They have the beep going, but there's no,
But I think that's kind of a statement to the old ways of Quint compared to the new technological ways of Hooper. It's like the old ways are better. I don't know. I kind of took that because every time Hooper did something, it was okay, but every time Quint did something, it was right? Oh, it's a 20-footer at 25. It's, it's I can shoot this with a harpoon. You got your fancy stuff. It doesn't work.
But they built Hooper as like a character that doesn't back down. Like he was
the
aggressor in many situations, and he didn't advocate for himself to bring his own bigger, much fancier, nicer boat along with the old boat. I could go down rabbit holes here, but
I know.
Well, and all the equipment they're loading on, like they're listing all the harpoons. And at one point they say an SMG. I'm like, submachine gun? Like, I don't think they brought a fully automatic rifle with them, but you know, he's got all of this stuff that's being loaded and then uses none of it.
Yeah. Damn it, this is compressed air. When it all falls apart on him.
Oh, yeah, they really sold that compressed air. Like, keep noticing it. It's going to come back.
It's coming back to you.
And actually, when they're doing the research, when he's doing the research through the book, there is a picture of a shark with a tank in its mouth.
Oh.
It's just in one of the pages where I was like, there it is.
Okay, now we're going to go to back it up moments, and I'll kick off the back it up moments. I have two. The first one is probably the most famous jump scare in any horror movie, is the head coming out of the hull of the ship. It still gets me, even though I know it's coming. Last night, I was rewatching it again, and it got me again. I was just like, I know this is coming, and then and then I jumped. And it's just so well done. I think the head still looks pretty good for, by today's standards, and it just kind of comes out there. It freaks him out. He drops his harpoon and everything goes crazy after that. But that's my first one. I love that jump scare. And then the second one I have is the slap scene with the one that loses her child. Most gratuitous scene, and she comes up and just hauls off on Sheriff Brody, slaps him so hard. And I guess she was really slapping him, like really hitting him, and they had to do that. They asked her how many times she had to slap him, and it was 17 times she slapped him to create that scene. Yeah. And he even said in an interview, he's like, yeah, she's really hitting me. She really winds up and slaps me. And it's well done. It shows. Yeah. And I like that scene. In fact, I know years afterwards, when they were interviewing her, she said that people would come up to her on the street and say, hey, can you slap me? And so she was doing like slaps to people just to mimic that scene. It's like, okay, I guess if that's what you're into. But yeah, those were my two. TJ, did you have any back it up moments for this film?
One of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is where they've already pegged Jaws with 3 barrels, and now they're trying to lure him back to shore. And there's a scene where the camera is pointing backwards at the boat, and you can see the barrels in the distance, and the captain starts to sing a Spanish song one more time, and he just does such a good job with his facial expressions of like, he knows that they're hooped, right? Like he knows that this isn't going well. The other two are scared in the background, and they brought up, I think he sings the song like 3 times or more, maybe in the movie itself. But that scene just set such, like, it was just so well acted in his face that like he's trying to be cool, but he knows like they're done. Yeah,
it starts off almost like this whimsical song that he sings at the start of their journey, and then it becomes a dirge by the end, where it's no longer like we're off to kill this monster. It's this is our funeral song.
Right.
Yeah. And it's the 3 times he sings it, it changes tone each time.
Yeah.
It's very well done. Very well used.
Now, Mike, what were your back it up moments?
One scene, we've talked about it a bit already, but it's Roy. I can't remember if it's 2 different scenes or if it takes place over one event, but the Roy Scheider or Martin Brody at the dinner table, there's a scene with his son where they're mimicking each other's movements, and there's this great music that plays, just establishing that family relationship and building that characterization of the Brody family. It's this quiet, peaceful moment that doesn't fit with the tone of the rest of it, but it really just builds up Brody in the hearts of the audience. So that scene did a lot for me with just really endearing myself to that character and that family.
Mm-hmm. Did they do that a couple times in the movie, which maybe you're going to talk about, so I won't. No, so when he asked his son to go play in the pond or whatever they call that, the separate,
not the beach, but the
pond.
Yeah.
And
ponds for kids.
Ponds for old ladies.
Yeah, old ladies.
And he's like, just do it for me. And the kid's like, okay, Dad.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, well, clearly they're showing that the kid loves the dad, respects him, is willing to do whatever his dad's asking.
Yeah.
So it gives you that, that just good guy vibes.
Mm-hmm. And then the dinner scene where, Brody's not touching his food, but he's got the whiskey, and then Hooper shows up. That entire scene, like the two of them on camera together, I've always liked Dreyfuss as an actor. But seeing that, like I've seen him in the later films. I love What About Bob, Mr. Holland's Opus, but I've always liked him. Going back to see him in his younger days and see him in Jaws with fresh eyes, the drama in that scene, the banter between the two, when he's like, "Oh, is anybody eating this?" and he takes it before Brody even says no, and it's like, "No, okay," and he just starts eating the dinner. It's just all of that was so well done. Watching the overpouring of the wine again, I liked the human aspect of this film more than the monster side of it. So that scene, I could watch that over and over again.
Well, the film's really about relationships, right? It's all relationships between Hooper and Brody in the water and the fish, and then Quinn and his relationships with the sharks and Captain Ahab kind of Moby Dick kind of thing, right? The wife and her relationship with Brody. And then I guess I had heard that there was a scene in there where Hooper and Ellen were supposed to, during that drinking dinner scene, were supposed to have a bit of a moment together. And
in the novel, they actually do have an affair.
Yeah, so there was that, but they cut that out. They had workshopped it and wondered about it, but then they ended up cutting it out. But you kind of see where it could have gone at that dinner scene, because he's making her laugh so much and they're really flirting it up with each other, but then it just kind of ends. Then they go cut the fish.
But I think it would have made Hooper and Ellen completely unlikable. So then you would have you would have no emotional investment in either of their stories. So then Brody becomes the only one we can attach to at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
I was cheering for Jaws the whole time, but I guess that's just me.
Do you have any more? Back it up, Mike?
I have the obvious one, and it's Quint's USS Indianapolis speech.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the middle of the monster hunt and the fight with Jaws, but it took me back to that human aspect of the film. And I love that actually entire scene around the table in the cabin where they're sharing their scars, and Dreyfuss opens up his shirt and you've got that Robert Shaw's like, "Oh, you're wearing a sweater." Yeah. And he talks about like, "This is the scar that blah, blah, blah gave me. It's in my heart." And it just like, it's so nice. And it's so, you just want to sit and have a drink with these three guys.
Yeah.
And then they sing that old shanty, "Show Me the Way to Go Home."
Yeah.
But then he goes into that USS Indianapolis speech.
Yeah.
And 1,000 men went into the water and 300 came out, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You can't take your eyes off the screen. There's nothing to see, but it's just so engrossing. So well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Like in a modern day movie, they'd probably do a cut scene to show what that was like, but he does a better version of it just talking about it than you could do with a cut scene.
Just focuses on him and him telling that scene, and he does a really, really good job with that one. Yeah.
It's mind blowing to me that they know like that is a true story, if you're not sure, but that really happened.
Yeah. Why
not make that movie instead of, we got a bad shark, we got to kill the shark? Make that the movie that you're making instead of Jaws itself.
Yeah. There's a book called In Harm's Way by Doug Stanton that I've read about that whole thing, and maybe they would make the movie today. I don't think they could have made it back then without getting a rated X rating. Right. It is so crazy what happened to those poor people on that ship. And I'll read a little excerpt of it when we go into our bonus features, but it's so disturbing. When the torpedoes hit and they follow this one guy around, that one of the captains that's trying to save people, and he's talking about limbs all over the place and people's burnt skin hanging off their bodies, and they're screaming and running around the ship. And it only took, like, Robert Shaw's telling of that story is accurate in most cases. The population of the people that went into the water is not accurate, but how he describes the sharks coming in and the people and that whole scenario is accurate. And it's a hard book to get through. It's very disturbing. And when they get rescued, it's not even like, there's no relief after that. They've been in the water for so long. You're in salt water for days and days and days. Your body just turns into this rubbery, spongy.
And thinking about it now, that would be a very dark movie. Like, you drop the bomb, you murder hundreds of thousands of people, you get back on a boat, you get blown up in the water, and then a bunch of people are eaten by sharks. So that's not a feel-good movie, I guess, in hindsight. But
you'd walk out of there just like, oh, just so sad. I mean, there is like a glimmer of hope when the 300 and some guys do get rescued, but a lot of people lose their lives in that, and it's just hell.
Yeah, it would become like a Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck. Like, it's just not told right.
Yeah, they would have to make some stupid love story where he gets back to his wife and stuff, where in actuality it doesn't happen. Yeah.
They'd add in that castaway aspect. There'd be a Wilson in there somewhere.
That's right, yeah. That wraps up our category. So now we're going to go into bonus features where we talk about, little tidbits, research we've done about the film. This film has been exhaustingly researched. I'm not sure if we're going to come up with any new pearls of wisdom for you out here. Probably if you've watched the making of Jaws or you've seen some of the many documentaries that have been listed, you'll get the same information, but we're going to give some of the stuff that we found out, and hopefully it's new to you. One of the that I noticed was, first of all, they had a schedule of 60 days. It went over 167 days of filming. They didn't really understand what it was going to be like to film on the ocean, and so there was a whole group of problems that came with just that alone. And I don't know if anybody has any research on that. Yeah, TJ?
Well, so and you can correct me if this is incorrect, but at Universal, they show you where they filmed some of the scenes in Jaws. Basically, they have a large pond where they did a lot of like the last 40 minutes of the film where they're fighting the shark and trying to kill the shark.
Yeah.
And once you've seen that, it's really hard to unsee it in the movie where they go from calm waters to their actual ocean shots where it's a normal ocean wave.
Right.
But like, yeah, they obviously had such issues with the ocean itself that they had to make that set work for them there.
Yeah,
because the ocean is just too unpredictable. It's a wild beast. Like, how you gonna?
Yeah, and they were out there, and they said one of the problems was while they were filming, people would be sailing in their sailboats, and they would say, this is supposed to be the last battle. Nobody's supposed to be out here. We're supposed to be way out into the water. And so they'd sit there, and these sailboats would come through their shot, and they'd have to cut, and then have to wait till the sailboats go away. They couldn't anchor properly. If the wind picked up and the water was too unsteady, then it would just pull the anchors every which way. They couldn't steady their shots with the cameras. They all had to do handhelds. They were like, if we do tripods, everybody's going to be sick because of the way it filmed.
There's one scene when they're early on the boat, and I think it's just before he starts fishing for Jaws. And the boat is just rocking up and down, and it almost looks like it's green screened with that ocean. And so, I could imagine if that had been shot in a different way, it would have just been nauseating.
Yeah, there is a excerpt from the Jaws log written by Carl Gottlieb. He was working on the set, and he talks about, they underestimated, I'll just read this little bit. He said, they had underestimated the power of the sea. Barnacles that would cut the divers' hands accumulated on the undersea platform. A special grease had to be applied to the dolly tracks while they were underwater by a scuba diving technicians. Growth of kelp and algae and seaweed would foul the works. The work barge with the controls on it was permanently anchored at sea and was christened the SS Garage Sail, officially as it turns out, because there was a Coast Guard registry involved. So just nothing but problems. And then the shark wouldn't work every day. They had problems with Bruce, the name of the shark. Yeah.
And I'm almost glad they did, right? Like Bruce doesn't show up until an hour and 21 minutes into the film. The movie's so much better because we don't see the shark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They must have been pretty stoked when they got that great white to come on top of the cage. Like when they're filming from the bottom, they catch a great white, like on top of the shark cage.
There, yeah. There's a little story about that too. He's like, they were trying to get this great white shark, and so they used this guy called Carl Rizzo, who was actually a little person, because as you had alluded to earlier, they could only find 15 to 18 feet sharks, so they wanted to make the sharks look bigger. So they did in fact try to use a small guy in a smaller cage. And so they had this small cage set up, and he was about to climb in, and this shark jumped up, got the cage, knocked Carl Rizzo back, and like took him out. and then took the cage down and got caught in it and started whipping around back and forth and back and ripped up cables and wire. If he had been in the cage, like he was climbing in, he was in the process of going into the cage. If he had been in it, he would have been killed. And so they use that shot from underneath to kind of show it, but they tried to go back out and shoot it again, but Carl was done.
Oh yeah, you could not get me back in that water.
I wonder if they would have changed Hooper's storyline if they got the real footage of that.
Yeah, I know, right? They do a little excerpt of that here when they're talking about the shark. He said they used chum, all these dead alive horse bits and fish heads and stuff like that to attach these, and they had this Carl-sized cage, which is 5/8 the scale, and these cute little air tanks. So one of the worries was that if he got caught underwater, the air would run out because they had such small tanks. So if he got in there, he'd be safe in the cage, but he'd run out of air. So they were battling with that as well. And then this shark just came in and just ripped it all apart. And then they were like, well, let's try it again. And he was no. So then they had to use that footage that they had. So
they needed more like a Team America World Police, like puppeteer with a really small puppet in there, in a really small cage to really get the effect.
Well, and nowadays they just 3D animate it, right? They'd make up a shark on the computer and be like, oh, there it is.
Or even
and it wouldn't look as real
puppeteering.
then either. Like they did their best with what they had at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, Spielberg with Jurassic Park, right? He tried to use real effects as much as he could. And in one of the interviews I was watching with him, he was talking about like, these are special effects, not computer generated effects.
Yeah.
And he's very proud of that in his films. And he does talk about how Jurassic Park still holds up because of trying to do it without the CGI. So I think even if he were to do Jaws in the 90s and 2000s, I think he still would have done puppeteering more than 3D animated with it. But the puppeteering at this point would have been much better. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah. Well, and even like at the end when Quint's getting eaten, the jowls on Bruce are just kind of laughable. Like they couldn't get that hinge to look right. And so he's just kind of chomping away, and it looks like almost like a bulldog jowls that are sitting there. Yeah.
Did you see the story about when Lucas visited the set? Just speaking of Bruce and his jaw and the jowls or the mouth.
No.
So yeah, Lucas came by just to see what was going on, and Spielberg, Lucas, and another guy went on to set in the evening, and they're just fooling around, and they're like, hey, put your head in there. Haha, it'll be great. We'll get a picture. And so when Lucas stuck his head in, Spielberg hit the device to close the mouth.
Yeah.
And it bit down, but obviously didn't injure Lucas because it wasn't designed to close fully. But then they couldn't get the jaws to open back up. So Lucas was stuck in, and they had to pry the mouth open to get him out. And they were like, oh shit, I think we broke the mechanism. And then they just left. They told nobody. So like the director of the film was screwing around, almost broke his own monster. And they're just like a schoolboy's like, nope, we weren't there. I don't know what
I'm
happened.
out of here. Yeah, I'm getting away. Yeah. Just a couple more things. In harm's way, again, the amount of people that went into the water, he said were 1,100 went into the water. It was closer to 900. So the book says it would be later estimated that 300 men died immediately during the torpedoing and subsequent explosions. Close to 900 people made it off the ship. And so those are the guys that went into the water and actually experienced probably the worst hell.
Well, it was the largest shark attack in history.
So just going on that, by dusk on Monday, hundreds of sharks had encircled them. They were makos, tigers, white tips, blues, rising to the speed of a man and a gentle run. And they talked about the bump and bite, and that's how they used to take them. So these guys would go in a circle, just like Quinn said. They'd circle up and they'd be buddies, and they thought that splashing around and flailing would scare the sharks away, but that attracts sharks because they think you're an animal so that they can eat. So then they just came in. They said later on that they set up a schedule. So they would feed in the morning and they'd pick off these people in the morning. And by the afternoon, they'd subside, they'd take off, they go away. And then as soon as the sun started to go down, they came back and started picking off people again. And by the end, when people thought they weren't being rescued, they would, I guess, commit suicide because they break away from the group and just be like, I'm just going to let the sharks take me. And so they'd walk out and these sharks would just come and just rip them apart. This book is amazing. Like if you really want to know what happened to the USS Indianapolis, it's such a good read. There's a quote from one of the survivors, Seaman First Class Gus K, that I'll just read and then I'll stop. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. They stalked for hours going around and around, and somebody said, "Those are PT boats." And another guy said, "No, those are sharks. It's the wake they make." Finally, they attacked. They pulled guys right out of the water. We thrashed, trying to keep them away from us, but they came right into the group. Took the net, everything right up into the air. Tore guys' limbs off. The water was bloody. And that's just his little telling of what happened during that. And it was days of that, right? So really, really scary. Speaking to that monologue, he really captures how horrific that moment was for them. So yeah. Any other research I did was the budget was $4 million. It went to $14 million. The shark would malfunction every day. They couldn't get it to work. It was always broken. They had 2 of them, and it would always break. Dreyfuss and Shaw feud is fairly, well documented. They didn't like each other. Dreyfuss says he was the nicest guy offset, like in private. They'd go for drinks and stuff, and they'd be super nice to each other. And then as soon as they got on set, he was just the biggest dick to him.
So I wonder if it was just like a method thing.
Yeah, I don't know. But that tension translated. But as soon as they started walking, he said we'd get to a certain part and then it would just switch. And he would just mean to him. He would challenge him all the time. I remember they said he challenged him to jump off the eye in the sky, or the bird's nest or the crow's nest. So he challenged him to jump off of that and go swimming, and Dreyfuss was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he got up there and he's like, "I'm not doing this." And the guy, so little things like that. And I mean, you can find all this stuff online. It's pretty crazy that the whole filming of that took like 5 or 6 months when it was only supposed to take 2. And they just did not know what they were getting into when they decided to film on the ocean.
I have a couple things, TJ. Do you have any?
I'll add one thing. So Chad talked about this earlier in the episode, but Jaws' big disservice to society as a whole is how it painted sharks in general as something to be feared. So the only research I did was checking out how sharks are being portrayed now. So one Instagram page I think that you should go check out is Ocean Ramsey. So Ocean Ramsey is a unbelievable freediver who dives with sharks and is like a shark researcher of types. And she swims with great whites without a cage. She swims right up to them, swims along with them, teaches you how to handle when sharks are coming near you. It's simple moves with your hand to their nose to apply pressure in certain ways and force them away. But it's just trying to educate folks on how sharks are the most important part of the ocean. They're an apex predator, of course, and they'll bite you now and again, but they shouldn't be feared. They should be protected. And that should be what you take away from. Like, you can watch Shark Week and think that sharks are monsters, or you can check out items like that and see how sharks are important. And we need lots of them. If you don't see sharks, that's a bad thing. You need a lot of sharks. That tells you it's a healthy reef.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'll check that website out for sure. That's cool.
For my research, I was just looking at some bonus features on the Blu-ray. There was one featurette just on the digital restoration and the process that went into that. And so at Universal, they were talking about the film stock that they have from all the movies they've ever made. And the restoration of Jaws was part of this Universal 100 years of film project, and they chose their top 100 movies, and Jaws was part of it. And this is nothing to do with Jaws, but the number of artifacts that they have in their film warehouses around the world is over 3 million. Whew. So it's just, the amount of negatives they've got.
Yeah.
And so for the digital restoration, they were looking at different ways they can do it. And they used the original negative of the film because they still have it. And the process was really cool because the film is old and it's been run a few times. So it's got a lot of scratches and dirt on it. And they tried to clean it up as much as they could. They still couldn't get a good scan. And so there's a fluid bath that you can put negatives into, and the water takes away these scratches. So as they were doing the scan to digital for the restoration, it was running through this fluid, and so that cleaned up most of the negative itself. And then a team of experts, like there's no other word for it, digital restoration experts, went through the film a frame at a time to clean it up. And
good Lord, that would take forever.
Some frames were over 3 hours for one frame of this film. And they showed the process where they would have a clean frame like they would have a damaged frame that couldn't be restored just by the water bath, and they would have the frame before and the frame after. And so sometimes if it was just the one frame, they could cut it out. But if there was multiple frames that were damaged and they needed to be cleaned up, and I think this is where that great, the tiger shark's eye comes into it. They would use Photoshop to paint it in either with, if they had it, if they had some stuff from the frame before and the frame after, they would do a composite to fill in the damaged area. If not, then they would digitally add it in or enhance it. So just that whole process was fascinating to see. And they showed what the original footage looked like compared to the cleaned up one. And it's amazing how well they did. Yeah, the effects are noticeable. And there's a few things like that. The two shooting stars that there's still controversy whether they were real or not. The second one,
back to back
controversy about shooting stars. That's not real. Get Neil deGrasse Tyson on the case.
The second one moves so shudderingly. It's like there's no way that's natural.
Well, it doesn't come past the cloud.
Yeah,
it stopped in.
With the digital restoration, those two, they should have just cleaned those right out. I don't know why they kept them in.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting bit. And then the other, just on the topic of budget. The budget ballooned up while they were shooting, but this is the first movie to ever gross over 100 million at the box office. So it is considered the first true summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Chad, you alluded to like this film's been researched and obviously written about to death. And I had texted you like research for this is overwhelming because there is so much. And what do you pick that's unique that, adds flavor to our podcast? And when I was searching, I was like, behind the scenes facts of Jaws, unique facts, and all these websites would pop up like 20 things you do not know about Jaws, and they'd be all the same listicles.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if 8 websites have the same information, it's not unknown. But the one I sort of finished with or enjoyed the most was from TV Tropes, where it talked just about the differences between the film and the novel. It ends with a very interesting take where in the novel, the orca's experiences, they take place over multiple days where they keep going back and heading back out. So just an interesting, different timeline.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the film does it better where they're out on the ocean and they almost become stranded.
They're committed, right?
Yeah. It becomes more tense, adds more weight to it.
He's on an island.
The storyline as to why Amityville's mayor needs to keep the beaches open. In the novel, he owes money to the mob.
Oh, right. I had heard that before. Yeah.
It's such a bizarre
and they took
plot
that
line.
out of there. Yeah.
But he does seem like a mob guy.
He does. Totally. The way he dresses, most definitely. Yeah.
But I think for the film, that would have been a whole side story that would have taken too much time. So
right.
Yeah. Hooper dies in the shark attack in the cage in the novel.
Oh.
Yeah. Quint drowns. He doesn't get eaten by the shark.
Huh.
So I don't know. I haven't read the novel and it didn't go into details, but his death is by drowning. Jaws dies from blood loss.
Oh, that's just. I'm glad they took those out.
Yeah,
I liked Quint, even though the jowls were weird. Like when I first watched it, I thought, something's a little off. Even as a kid, I was like, his mouth's a little weird. Like it's just chompa chompa chompa, right? But he slides down. That death scene's like crazy good.
When he's trying to kick his way away from the mouth.
He's trying to keep his feet. Like he wants to live. He's trying to keep his feet on the shark's like nose and teeth, and he's trying to kick back, and he's just slowly going in, and then he chomps him, goes in like a conveyor belt, and it's crazy.
They should have had his eyes roll back in his head. That's another little detail they missed when the shark bites and their eyes roll back to protect themselves.
That's true. Yeah. That little filter comes over top and every time they bite. But I think that the fact that Bruce was chomping, I think they were just happy that they could get the scene shot.
The last difference before I get to like the reason I'm doing all this is, in the novel, the newspaper writer was actually more sympathetic to Brody and supportive of Brody.
Oh, okay.
And so before the orca heads out, the journalist actually writes an article in the paper condemning the council and saying they knew they should have closed. And so more people were behind Brody. Whereas in the film, the newspaper seems more defensive and
Everybody's
protective.
against Brody, it seems, right? Yeah. But I think that's how you set up like that classic horror movie. You want to talk about tropes. It's like when the teenagers run to the cop and they're like, oh, you're partying again, and everything. And this guy knows and he wants to take the safe route, but they're like, no, we gotta.
We know better than you. Yeah. And the reason I shared all that, because this next little bit is great. So Spielberg read the novel in preparation for this, and he's quoted as saying that he hated the novels, the characters so much, or found them so unlikable, like the heroes, that he actually wanted Jaws to win in the end.
Yeah. Team Jaws.
TJ was cheering for the shark the whole time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he does a good job of making them likable in the film compared to the novel, because you've got like Hooper who cheats, Ellen who, there's that affair. Quint is, the drunk.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's not a lot to latch onto there, right? You're just like, oh, I want this shark to win. Well, and another thing I had heard is that because Bruce wasn't working, he had to do a lot of those point of view shots. Like he had to use a lot of those camera angles and things like that. And when the movie was released, everybody was saying, oh, it's so innovative and amazing. He's creating a new way of filming. And he was like, I was just trying to get around a shark not working. I wasn't trying to be this like trailblazer of film. He's like, I just could not use the shark, which obviously made it a better film. As we've said, like if you saw Jaws or Bruce, I guess, swimming around and then seeing that woman in the opening scene, seeing her from like that, where she's swimming, that undershot where she's swimming and you just see her swimming around and you hear the music and Jaws is watching it. That's so iconic. It's so well done.
And the camera moving up as she's treading water.
Yeah. And it's just do 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 do, and then the music stops, and he takes a chomp, and it's like, I think it worked out for the best, even though it was frustrating at the time. I'm sure you're like, I've got 2 months to film this. I've got a $2 million couple of sharks, and both of them aren't working. Like, it'd be so frustrating. He said sometimes he would, the only thing to do would be laying down and waiting for someone to come up and tell him the sharks were good to go and we could film. And it's like, it just took forever. Yeah. Okay. So our last category, we're going to do watchability scale. Mike, what would you give this out of 10?
I'd give it an 8. I really liked it. Still holds up. It's around that same level as the other ones we've given 8s.
Let's say 7.9.
Oh,
just to be different, but I agree. It's somewhere around an 8.
I'm rounding you up. I've already put 0.5s on the scale. I'm not putting.
Oh, is it only 0.5s? Okay, and I'll go 7.5.
All right. Well, you guys are a little harsher than I am. I'm going 9.
9.
I love this movie. I've watched it so much that there's just no way I can't give it a high. The watchability scale, I can't give it a low mark because obviously it's a watchable movie. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.
I could maybe give it a 9, but I would give the first half of the film a 10.
Yeah,
it's the second half that's dragging me down a bit.
Yeah, see, and I liked I liked the monster aspect of it. I liked when he's throwing the chum and he's complaining and he's just like, you fucking, I'll just do this. And he's like, you come down here and throw this slop. And then all of a sudden, the shark shows up. It's like, whoa. And that's where that famous line comes in. You're going to need a bigger boat. And then I like the way Quint dies. I remember watching it. The shark, when he's like driving for him and he's chomping away on that tank, that's a little give or take, and then when they're kicking and going back, it's like, what day is it today?
Yeah,
Tuesday. I don't know. I just really liked the whole movie. So
I think it's due for an HBO full season of the backstory of Jaws. What happened to Jaws that he's so angry? And then the USS Indianapolis. That's 2 or 3 episodes right there.
Oh yeah.
And then the buildup of characters, the mobsters, and then maybe the final episode is Jaws is there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to us. Be sure to check out our social media pages on Instagram. We are at ScreamStreamPod. Please stop by our website, www.screamsandstreams.com, where we have information about our episodes, descriptions of our categories, links to our research, and our watchability scale, where we rank all of the films that we are looking at. Please subscribe to rate and comment on our shows on any platforms where you get your podcasts. I'm Chad Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, this has been
Mike
and
TJ.
Thank you very much.